So, hello, welcome. Thank you for coming and listening to our talk. So, who are we? Hello, I am Monica. I'm the Chief Analytics Officer at Florence, and this is Daniel. He was actually my first hire when I first joined Florence. He's our data engineer. So, probably not many of you have heard about Florence and what we do. To give you a brief background of who we are a marketplace, a web and mobile marketplace that connects healthcare professionals. So if you think about nurses or carers with healthcare organizations, so hospitals and elderly care homes, mental health care homes, we operate in the healthcare temp staffing industry. It is an extremely outdated industry. Healthcare is, to start with, and temp staffing within that is very outdated. Florence was really born of a problem. There's a staffing crisis, tons of demand, but it is definitely under-resourced, and it has tons of inefficiencies. And Florence is really looking to kind of remediate that problem with technology. So the way that this industry kind of works is, to give you a brief background, if a hospital or a care home is needing some last-minute nurse shifts, maybe later this week, what they'll traditionally do is pick up the phone and kind of work through a list of phone numbers that they know of other nurses or carers that they've worked with before, and then ask, hey, are you available this Friday to work a shift? Obviously, this is incredibly tedious. So there's other temp staffing agencies that are out there that do kind of what we do, but on a more manual basis. So they will call a temp agency. The temp agency will run through their list of their own phone numbers of people, and then they'll ask the same question, are you available this Friday? So as you can tell, it's a very much phone-driven industry. And what we're trying to do is hopefully with data and with technology kind of elevate the industry a little bit. So when we first joined, we've been there for about a year now, we ran into a lot of challenges. So there was a huge challenge with data culture within Florence. The first being there was a bit of a negative attitude towards complicated products, complicated technology, complicated data. Numbers were not at the forefront. A lot of people at Florence are operations and sales driven. So we are about 200 to 250 in terms of number of people at the company. And a lot of that is operations and sales, and they are essentially data product users within the organization. But because they've been in the industry for a very long time, they have a certain mindset of working. Data is quite new. It is not like some other industries where it is a necessity. But in healthcare still, data is a luxury and it's a nice to have. So there was a little bit of pushback on, I don't want to use this tool, or I don't want to use data because it's so foreign to me. The next thing was that Florence was not very data literate. Everybody in the organization had access to Looker. Fantastic. But nobody was given training. People didn't even know what it was. They had access to it. They're like, what is this thing that shows me some colors and maybe there's some buttons here and there. But they had no idea what it was used for and the benefits that it could bring. And that is not their fault. Also, Looker, from when we first joined, was built with incredibly ambiguous fields. We had fields that said profit, but it did not calculate profit at all. And people just didn't know where to start. And some people had the appetite as well. But, they're like, okay, how can I trust this data if it doesn't calculate profit and it says profit, right? So I think all fair concerns. And so therefore, significantly low level of trust in the data, in the numbers, and anything really we wanted to produce. The final thing was that there were lack of insights. We were doing a lot of great number spewing for board reporting purposes, which was great, which is good. It's a good place to start. But no one was really asking, so what? Okay, great, our revenue is down. So what? What are we going to do about it? And a lot of the actions were driven by gut feeling. So nobody wanted to turn to the data team or turn to a dashboard or turn to anybody that knew data and ask, can you help me understand why my revenue is down and come up with proper action items to help this scenario? So that was just the culture challenge. Then we arrive at a lot of technical faults, I guess. So we had a data stack, which was not built for scale. Our ingestion tool at the time was Stitch. It had continuous disturbances with one of our main connectors that we relied heavily on, which was our CRM, which is HubSpot. We didn't get the proper support we needed from customer service from Stitch. I know some people have worked with Stitch before. It's not the best customer service. It had major blips with our connection to our product data, which is our kind of bread and butter of everything we reported, really. So major issues there. Florence actually is now live in multiple countries. So our main business is the UK, but we operate in Ireland, we operate in France, and we just launched in Canada earlier this year. So it was not built to scale across different countries and continents, really. We also have multiple products. So our staffing platform is our main product, but we also have a sister product that provides an educational platform for people in healthcare wanting to become nurses and carers in the future. So it was not built to ingest data and understand data from a completely different product itself. The second thing was that there was no real design in thinking of any of the tables or models or visualizations or anything we put into Looker. There was really no concrete thought process. It was more of do, rather than think and then do. So before we were there was a consultancy that was brought in to kind of set out the foundations and obviously put basic things in place. And so when we got there, it was a lot of outdated calculations, tables that had strange joins that, we couldn't untangle, but no one was using them. And none of the queries were optimized. The code was terribly written. I couldn't understand anything. And really, there was no distinction between staging models, MART models. They might as all been the same thing. And really, I think this really kind of ticked me off was that there was none to minimal testing on anything we really did. So no wonder profit doesn't calculate profit. So we had some issues, obviously. But we want to really focus on some of the tactics that we leverage and the guiding principles we looked at to solve these challenges in the year that we've been at Florence. We'll discuss 3 different guiding principles. I'll talk about it in a more business sense, what that meant, and then Daniel will give some technical examples. And then, and I think it's really important. We really wanted to talk about this because when we first got there was really nothing. And then, but now within a year, which we think is a very short span of time, we've been able to achieve so much, and we've seen so much success. One being there's so much trust within the data right now. Maybe a little too much, I think, sometimes, to the point where, people are like, oh, we don't trust GA4 data. We only want to trust whatever's in Looker at this point, but they say the same thing. So, I'm like, okay, sure, but all right, you do you. And the other thing is that the organization is heavily reliant on the data that we produce, the dashboards that we produce. We are a part of everybody's day-to-day, which is really, really exciting for us to see. And the final thing is we actually even have an external facing dashboard that our clients leverage. They can just log onto our website, and then they have all their statistics there, which we've embedded fully into the product, which is really exciting. So the first kind of guiding principle that we have is really accomplishing full adoption by delivering in pieces. As I mentioned, culture was a huge, huge thing for us. And the first thing that we tried to do was really aim for smaller iterative deliveries and really keep people on their toes. I think when stakeholders who aren't aware of data, when they ask for a data product, a lot of them say, like, oh, it's just number. Why can't you just give it to me? It's so easy, right? But I think as data people, we know that it's not that straightforward and it's not that easy, and it takes a lot of work and time and effort that's really put into it, right? And our natural instinct, I think, is to, under-promise, over-deliver, right? No, it's going to take however many months and however many resources. But basically, what we tried to do was we said, okay, we understand you want all of this. And this is our first work in progress, and we just threw anything and everything we had, whether it was right or wrong, kind of out there. And we said, because it's a work in progress, there's room for error, but let's see if you actually use it or question it. And then we were delivering every single week on something different, whether it be a bug change or a new feature or whatever it was. So it was a very, very quick turnaround, and everybody was so engaged and kind of looped into the process as well, which was great. So the second thing was to be on the ground and empathize with our users. Like I mentioned, a lot of Florence is operations and sales. We have hubs in Glasgow and Birmingham, so we made frequent trips to those hubs. We actually sat down and shadowed a lot of the people on the ground and tried to understand their role and challenges and pain points from a higher level perspective, irrelevant to data, irrelevant to technology, and try to identify certain problems that they were having and try to solve it with data. And during these trips, we also ran a lot of Looker training sessions. In-person training, we found that works significantly better than online training, so it helped us out a lot. We also designated Looker champions in each office. So people who were part of operations who were keen to kind of upskill themselves or was interested in data, we kind of plucked them out and said, you are the Looker champion of this office. Here is a new dashboard, or here's a new metric. This is what it means. This is how you use it. And then they would go and train their offices and kind of help people out on a day-to-day basis. And really, the final thing is, I think this is kind of a straightforward. If you're a manager and if you're hiring, you obviously want that unicorn of people who can speak data and speak business, right? So that was my second key hire for the team after Daniel. And it was just so critical for us to have somebody that understood the business and went out and build that rapport and that trust. And really differentiate us from the tech team and the product team and kind of give us an identity within the organization, which is super helpful. So this is a quick example of our iterations. So if you see the major problem some of the ops and sales people were having was that they run on an extremely convoluted commission model. So a lot of them are tracking their commissions, their targets, in their little notepad scribbling or in their own Excel spreadsheet. But it's so difficult. Like, I wouldn't even been able to keep track of how much money I was making that month. So what we decided to do was make everything super transparent, leverage the product data. So based on, what clients are posting shifts or, what workers are, filling those shifts. Put all their targets into one. So we just spewed out everything onto that super lengthy Looker dashboard in the very beginning. And then we went to the offices, and then we saw which buttons that they clicked on. And they were obviously not using 90% of that lengthy dashboard, probably only just the top bit. But it actually took us 6 months of iterating every week and kind of chatting with people to come to our final product, which is on the left-hand side. of the targets and where they were and how much money exactly they were tracking on for the end of the month, as well as more of an eligibility list, kind of working like a CRM to see, oh, these are the list of clients I need to call today to, reactivate them. And then once they did, they would pop into the bottom table, and so they know that that money was going to their commission that month. So it took us a while, but the journey was super successful. We had a ton of influence into shaping the commission model as well, and just helping the people on the ground, which is great. We also kind of added some fun things. So if you look at on the left side, one of the things that we encountered while we were doing Looker training was that not everybody was really equipped to use Looker, and that was okay, and that's perfectly fine. So what we did was we kind of retracted the Looker access from a lot of people and then gave it to people who were actually leveraging it. But what we did was we created a page within our internal product page where if you look on the right-hand side here, based on your role, it gives you a list of all the dashboards that you need to use every single day to do your job. So it was, when everybody had Looker access, there was a bit of like confusion and analysis paralysis. But now you only have, 5 to 7 things that you need to look at day to day. And we actually collect data from this page, ingest it right back into our warehouse, and then visualize it on Looker for the leadership team. And it has exponentially improved our usage of our dashboards, just having it embedded onto the product itself. We also have a little sticker that we put on all the dashboards that we review. So if people want to go and make their own dashboards, great. But a lot of the times, because some of the fields are still ambiguous, they ask us, is this the right data? Is this the way that we should be looking at it? And then we review, and then we put that sticker on, and we say, okay, it's been certified. This is the source of truth. You're all good to go. And then that blue button, if you click it, it shows you the dashboard owner of whoever's on my team that's reviewed it, and it takes you directly to our ticketing board. So if you want to put in a new feature request, bug request, whatever it is, it's there. And then if we recorded the training, it's in that purple button right below. So all the information is just kind of embedded onto every single dashboard.
Hello. Oh, I think I can hear myself. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm Daniel, data engineer. I've been introduced. So going back to the point around quick and fast deliveries, I think what we initially did was we scoped down the sort of size of what we were delivering so that we could deliver quickly. But if you want to maintain quick delivery while building trust and building high quality data, you need to do a bit more. So we've relied on technology and tools as a huge lever when it comes to removing barriers to delivering value quickly. So I'll pick on a couple of common categories of work that I think have to happen on a per release basis that really take a lot of time. So the first that I can think of is coordination. So when you need a teammate to do some work for you to be able to ship a change, say I need to talk to a data engineer to get some data from Postgres into BigQuery, or I need to coordinate with a product engineer to record some new information. Or maybe it's the other way around and I'm asking an analyst, like, here I've modeled a bunch of data, it's ready to go. Could you please build a dashboard so that someone can actually use the benefits of my work or get benefits from my work? So individually, these little bits of coordination don't always take a huge amount of time, but it distracts someone else, and it means that you've kind of, sometimes you're stuck, you're blocked, waiting for someone else. So that's coordination. The second thing that comes to mind is quality control. So before you ship, you want to be sure that you're not shipping incorrect figures to people and they're making bad decisions as a result. You also don't want to break anything in Looker. Like, we've all shipped things that have just like completely break dashboards, and that's a horrible feeling. And yeah, so you often do some work manually. Maybe you're reviewing heavily used dashboards in Looker to make sure that the figures look roughly correct. You're performing spot checks on the new tables that you're introducing, or you're checking that you haven't introduced any duplication in your table because of that join you just introduced. So when your release cycles are relatively long, let's say you're pushing out a release every month, every 2 weeks, every week, you can sometimes afford a day here or there for QA. But if you're aiming for delivery in the order of sort of hours or days even, you just can't. You can't fit that much QA in, so quality drops as a result. So let's take a look at making them smaller without cutting corners, making delivery cycles shorter. So one step we take to reduce the coordination aspect is that we rely on technologies that are accessible to everyone on the team. So for our extract load tool, we use Fivetran because it makes it easy to bring new data in from new or existing sources. Like an analyst can go in there, I can go in there similarly. The fact that DBT uses the lingua franca of data, so SQL, means that, again, analysts are comfortable, I'm comfortable. And then Looker, like even as an engineer, I don't mind going in there and building the odd report so that I can get that piece of value delivered to our end users. When we're able to use all of the tools that we need to complete small end-to-end projects entirely independently, we avoid the need to coordinate with others on implementation. But coordination is still important in a lot of cases, but it's really about being able to finish pieces yourself when you need to. There's also another benefit here in that being comfortable with your entire data stack, or your whole team being comfortable with your entire data stack, means that they can work together better. Like they can review each other's PRs. It's really important on a small team like ours, where we've got a few analysts and myself, that I can get peer review on the changes that I'm making, and I can feed back into the work that they're doing too. The next thing that I was going to speak about was quality control. So one of the big things that we do is we do our best to shift work away from people and onto machines as much as we can. We have a bunch of checks there in CI. You can see that we use SQL Fluff to enforce code consistency across all of our code bases. We use DBT tests heavily, so generic tests to ensure that we don't have nulls in columns we don't expect nulls in, our foreign keys actually point somewhere, and that unique columns are truly unique. We use custom tests for building out sort of more business-specific requirements as well, so that we can write these once and then we know going forwards forever, like we don't have to pay that QA cost again. Finally, we have end-to-end testing so that when we open a DBT PR and there's any risk of it breaking a Looker dashboard, we find out right then. So we use a tool called Spectacles, and it basically does some clever stuff I'm not going to go into the details of right now, but it does give us a huge amount of confidence that what we're shipping doesn't break end-to-end reports or end-user reports. Combined, these three things give us a huge amount of quality, confidence in the quality of the changes we're shipping, and basically free us up to focus on the sort of finer details that people are really good at working through and good at identifying issues in.
So the second guiding principle that we were relying on was really achieving speed to value by making most of what you have. And I think there's so many tools and technologies out there that are so flashy, that are so new, everybody's super excited about them. But what we tried to do was really learn the tools that we had and leverage every single bit of it. I think a good example is we use almost all of DBT's available features to us right now. And it just kind of started with asking ourselves, when you need a new functionality, more of not rather what tool can do it, but more of what tool within the ones that I have can serve that purpose. And surprisingly so, you'll find out a lot of the tools are very, very good at one thing. And you might not think that they're good at other things, but they're moderately good at some other things. And leveraging those bits and pieces can actually be quite helpful. The other thing is, if you've answered that question and the answer was no, your current tool cannot do any of the things that you're thinking about, the next question we tried to ask was, okay, can our current tool do it in the near future, or can we ask the product team of that tool to help us build it out? Can we be the guinea pig? A good example of this is actually, we work very closely with Fivetran. They've built us some light connectors for, I personally think no one ever, other than us, probably uses this data source, but it's like a very healthcare specific data source. But yeah, surprisingly, they didn't say no, and they said, yes, okay, we'll do it. Please do ask. We have an incredibly tight relationship with all of our vendors, and they tend to say yes to a lot of things that surprises us, actually, which is good. And the third thing is enjoy days like today. We try to go to a lot of conferences. We try to network a lot. One of the things that I like to do is I like to ask our vendors' customer success team to really connect us with other customers of theirs and other prospect customers and past customers. So we could just learn about the different use cases and how they're leveraging the tool and make sure that we're getting the most out of everything we currently have. So please do come talk to us after the talk.
Cool. So building on that idea of understanding your tools, what I found is that a lot of tools are like icebergs. They have a lot of depth. There's a lot under the surface that you haven't discovered yet. They're also not like icebergs because they often contain buried treasure. And by digging into those icebergs and not icebergs, we've uncovered things that have helped us get a lot done quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'm sure there's something on there that you haven't seen or you haven't used before. But a lot of it will feel familiar. I've kind of picked from the higher sides of the iceberg. Learn your tools. They're great. Hopefully.
The third and final thing is striving for flexibility with the right architecture. And I think everybody's seen diagrams like this with the perfect architecture of your data stack. Like I mentioned, there's so many things that you can pick and choose from. And I'm sure everybody has experience with some of these things. Maybe all of them. I'd be very surprised if somebody has experience with all of these things. But yeah, the way that we try to approach this was, one, keeping it simple. So that is our current stack right now. Fivetran, dbt, BigQuery, Spectacles, and Looker. And we try to critically evaluate our tools and really kind of involve other parts of the business into our decision-making process. So a good example of this is when we first joined Florence, reverse ETL wasn't really kind of on the radar. But the longer we worked there, we saw a very, very strong use case for pushing BigQuery data back into places like our CRM, HubSpot, as well as the product itself. So we were first evaluating tools like HighTouch. It seemed like there were a lot of bells and whistles for where we were at right now. So it didn't really quite fit the bill until we started talking to our product team, and they were already leveraging Segment, which had released kind of reverse ETL functionalities earlier this year. So we kind of jumped on the bandwagon and borrowed and piggybacked off of them. And it's surprisingly so, it is working incredibly well for us right now in terms of reverse ETL. And it's definitely opened up a lot of avenues for us going forwards. And the third thing is really understanding the urgency and, of the challenge versus the impact of the tool itself. So one of the issues that we had was two competing challenges, one being a lot of breaking in LookML code, a lot of changes that we didn't really expect to see came along, and then while you're writing code, we don't have enough time to check, and so on and so forth, and this breaks that, and it's all spaghetti noodles everywhere. And then the other problem we had was with metadata. There was not enough documentation when we first joined, and nobody knew anything about the data lineage. There was, there's no definitions for the metrics. It was just a mess. So, but there are two separate problems, two very important problems, but both we had to tackle. Really, we came to kind of deciding on which one was the most important and would give us the most impact, and we decided to go and choose Spectacles and solve the LookML piece of the problem first. We decided that the metadata tool would be super helpful for us in larger scale problems, maybe in a couple years' time, is definitely something we still have to deal with. But we can leverage DBT documentation as well as Looker documentation and Notion and whatnot for our business users for the time being. Whereas with LookML QA, I think it helped us tremendously in kind of building trust within the organization of our numbers that we were putting out there. Also, kind of saving the team time, especially when you're such a small team. Having the machine just kind of do the QA for you.
Cool. So I'm going to zoom in on a couple of smaller architectural or design decisions that we've made that have kind of helped us over this journey. So for a long time in Looker, we had three key explores, basically representing the elements of our business. We had shifts, we had locations, and we had workers. Shifts are posted by locations, and workers work shifts. Initially, this seemed sensible enough and meant that people could self-serve on Looker. They could pick out one of those explores and start answering questions because pretty much all the information was available in each. But as things grew, we realized that this was actually a bit of a problem. You can see our shifts explore there. It's got 41 joins, 400 dimensions, and 130 measures. It's not the worst we have, I don't think, but it's pretty close. These things acted as magnets for more stuff. So every time we added a new table, a new sort of thing that we wanted to measure, it just naturally fit into shifts, locations, and clients because they're all connected. You can't answer questions about shifts without bringing clients in. You can't answer questions about shifts without bringing locations in. So this kind of view of like, let's just model the objects in the business led to like quite big problems for us. What we've done is we've taken a leaf out of Kimball's book, like a star schema dimensional modeling. So we're building new explores around fact tables, so narrow measurable processes like customer survey responses, like shift postings, like user registrations. And we're finding them much easier to use for sort of end users, much easier to maintain for ourselves. And like they just don't grow nearly as quickly because they're answering like a specific set of questions. Cool. The next one that I want to talk about is centralizing business logic. So previously, we spoke about breaking big things down, so taking big, mega, monolithic explores and breaking them into smaller pieces that make life easier. Here, we're actually talking about bringing small, cute things together. So the problem that we were facing was that we'd look at some tables in Looker, and we'd be like, those figures don't look right. Or we'd have stakeholders come to us and say, are you sure about my commission for this week, right? So we say, OK, let's look into this. We dig down, and we're like, OK, let's run some queries against BigQuery. We're getting different results. We run some queries against our source database, and we're getting different results again. Investigating further, what we found was that there was a common pattern. In Looker, we were performing data transformation and cleaning. In DBT, we were performing data transformation and cleaning. And it was often the same thing in different places, duplicated and done slightly differently. So like with that level of understanding, thank you. The solution is obvious, right? Like deduplicate, bring all of that stuff into DBT or into Looker, whatever you want. But into DBT is probably more sensible. And we just found that helps so much. Like we can run queries against BigQuery and get the same results as we're seeing in Looker. The kind of I think moral here is like if you've got two cats in two boxes, put them in one. Trust me, it's much better that way. Look at them.
So to quickly conclude, make sure you iterate and make sure you make the most of what you have. Look at what you currently have, make the most of it. And when you're evaluating outside, make sure you're aligning on the right architecture. And please come talk to us after. We love to chat. So thank you.
Thank you so much.